into this discussion. So the aim of the discussion is to understand the lived experiences of the people on the panel, in particular about the relationship to the Northwest and its advantages as a unique location for growing a brand. So as well as the opportunities and that businesses in the Northwest have to grow strong brands and become more competitive on an international scale. So I'm going to start by asking you guys to introduce yourself to everybody, tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do, how long your business has been going, and what your experience is like so far. So it's a loaded question. Do you want to start, Chris?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to thank you, John, for the invitation today, and hopefully you can get an insight from various people here, just as to how important the whole heritage and provenance is to the future for the industry in Ireland. So Donegal yarns, I suppose we can trace our history goes back to the 18th century in terms of it was very much a cottage industry. There was the resources, or limited resources, that were involved in the west of Donegal, northwest of Donegal. There was the rearing of the animal for the meat, then the wool as the opportunities for it to spin it into a workable fibre for woven fabrics, and hence the Donegal and that famous character that's within the product. So today the company operates a facility in Kilcar. We employ 50 people. And we're exporting 40% of our production would be exported. And interesting enough, 60% of the product is actually staying within these shores in certain forms, obviously destined for international markets and within Ireland. The importance for us is the customer. It's the designers, the makers, and the value that the customer places in the product. Over the years, the company has really focused on working with the designers, and that collaborative approach to understanding the designers who are closer to the market, what the product offers them in terms of opportunities. And from that, the product has evolved. We had maybe 3 core businesses or products in 2006 when the company was privatized, and today we've expanded that. And we've had to look at our whole manufacturing process and be a lot more flexible to service that designer.
Okay, brilliant. And I'm going to ask you the same thing, Maria. So
sure.
Just to explain a little bit about your background and your connection with the Northwest.
Absolutely. So my name is Maria Couchman, and I work with the Design and Crafts Council Ireland. So we're based down in Kilkenny in this amazing, beautiful heritage building just across from the castle. So if you're ever around, do come down. I work in the capacity of as Senior Craft and Education Advisor, and I suppose the Design and Craft Council Ireland's remit is really around the promotion and support of designers and of makers, and of raising the profile of the sector itself. So in terms of, I suppose, my background, I actually spent most of my career in the food industry. So I worked with Board Bia for about 13 years in the London office and then in the Dublin office. So I guess I've got a lot of experience around, I suppose, sectoral development, but also an understanding around, small and medium enterprises and how they build their brand and how they build their business and how they look at markets and how they look at their product and how they understand their customer. And there's a lot of parallels, I think, within the craft sector, and it was such a joy for me, I suppose, to join the Design and Crafts Council about a year ago, but to look at the different sectors, to look at the fashion that's going on, and to look at, the jewellery skills and the goldsmithing skills and, ceramics. So, there's such a wealth of skills that are there, the beauty that's created in these products that can be passed on, and this idea, I suppose, that we have around sustainability from an environmental perspective, but there's also such a benefit that consumers can get by buying a product and getting that feeling that they get, you know, that beauty. I've got an Andrew Ludwig jug that's just been delivered to me yesterday. I cannot wait to unwrap it. It's sitting at my desk. I missed him, and I cannot wait to get down and unwrap it. And it's beautiful pink colours and green and all the rest of it. So I suppose for me and for the DCCI, it's very important that we are here, that we're present, that we're listening to, you know, to Chris and listening to, you know, to Bridie's and listening to Aideen and listening to you as well, and understanding what is going on in the marketplace and what are the sector place and what the needs are. We've just appointed a new head of design, which is really exciting, a guy called Tom Watts. So he's developing out his department at the moment, and we've got a new head of craft and education. So we're really going to be putting a big focus around traineeships, around apprenticeships. We're also working with ATU, we're working with Trinity Tangent, which is Trinity College Dublin's Ideas Workspace. And we're working with the Creative Futures Academy and NCAD around circular by design, which is really around the sustainability side of things. So I guess it's just to say, if you're not familiar with Design and Craft Council Ireland, just go onto our website, because we've got so many things going on that I think are relevant and of interest to you, and you can become a member as well. And this is our design week too, so we've had a really full program of events which have been really exciting. So you could just check out Design Week Ireland and see all the amazing speakers. We had Bruce Mao speaking on Monday around design. He's a globally recognised designer that has redesigned Mecca. He's looked at the logo for the Museum of Modern Art. He's just fascinating. So I suppose it's very much about the collaboration piece that Chris was talking about across industry, and that's very much what we want to do. We want to bring people together, we want to learn from them, and we also want to help and support the industry. So that's my introduction.
And Bridie, I'm going to ask you the same thing, and particularly as a designer based in Donegal in the north of Ireland, about your experience to date and about how where you were, you know, from and based has affected your career.
I suppose, like most people, my career started off as a hobby. I grew up in a family of knitters and sewers and lived in the countryside, and there was a linen business in that area. So I think it was inevitable I would follow a linen theme. But I started off as a teacher. I did a bachelor's degree. I taught in England. Like yourself, I went back and did a master's degree. And then I came back here and worked for the Education Authority for about 25 years, working with teachers. Like Maria, I've had a non-linear career. But no matter what I did, I was always sewing as a hobby on the side and making for people. So when I finished with the Education Authority, I decided to make that a full-time job. I didn't realise just how full-time it would be. You know, when you're sitting at 3 a.m. trying to get orders fulfilled. I think I probably gained most from working collaboratively. I'm based here in the city. I live quite locally. And I would say to anyone starting up, you cannot do it alone. No matter what your business is, you will work for a little while on your own, but you very soon realise you don't have part of the business structure. So whilst I had the hobby and I had definitely had the skills to make and to design, I had no idea about business. That's a whole other world. So I was very fortunate to get support from the local council here through a range of schemes, just like you have in your area, Marie. So there were various sort of baby steps, and then it increased in terms of the support. Also working with the fashion and textile industry with Deirdre here, who's with us today. It's an incubation space supported by the Inner City Trust in the city. We had workspace, we had cutting rooms, quality machines, etc. Social media support, and so on. So it actually takes some of the burden off the designer to be in that collaboration. We were able to attend things like Pure Trade Show, trade shows in Dublin, Showcase. And I think probably from Showcase, I found that people who came there were just there to buy Irish. And that was much better than working. Although when I went to Pure, it was under the conscious fashion heading. In Dublin, people were coming in from, Japan, Canada, and so on, just looking for Irish and just looking for the story behind it. In terms of sustainability of the product, well, it was there because it was a plant-based product. We're very fortunate. Whilst we lost all our shirt industries, we kept the factories. So there are several factories in Northern Ireland still making linen. So I don't have the mileage problem, and I make sure I buy in bulk. I'm very fortunate that they will design a fabric for me with minimum orders down to 13 metres, and I think that's quite astonishing in this day and age that you can get such a small quantity, which is great if you're, I've lost the mic, but if you're just trying out a garment and you want to do a minimum order and a minimum run, you're not sitting with 500 yards and then it doesn't work. So just getting that locally and working with those factories is just fabulous.
That's amazing. I'm going to ask actually Chris the next question. What is unique to the Northwest that has inspired the development of your business?
I think for us, it's if I can show some of the characters. I'm not sure if everybody in the audience is aware of the Donegal and the tweed. So I think it's the inspiration and the color, the vibrancy of the color that we can achieve. And the beauty about the yarn that we've developed is that it's quite versatile, that it can be used both for knitwear, woven fabrics, and that can extend into sort of home furnishings and interior fabrics. So it's this unique fleck that's in the yarn, and in actual fact, the development of that yarn came through sort of outside. There was all the various different dyeing processes that were going on, and the short staple fibre, it actually, when they were hand carding and hand spinning the yarn, this fibre actually rolled, and when it was hand spun, which has that particularly a rough, uneven character, it actually created this little sort of fleck in the yarn, and when that was actually woven into the actual fabric or knitted, it gave that unique character. And from that, we've developed recipes. So the uniqueness of the product, even though you've got all these various different colors, if you actually look at them, the vibrancy of them, that within one color, there could be 3 or 4 different colors in the base, and then we use the various different fleck colors. And one thing that's very important to the company is that everything we use is 100% natural fibers.
Great. Okay, so then this one's from Maria. What do you feel we need to do to raise the fashion and textile industry in the Northwest to new heights?
I think there's a huge amount of opportunity. Some things that can be sort of, that are in action and in play, and then others that will take some time. But I think, for instance, things like geographical indicators, I think that's phenomenal progression. And at the moment, there's obviously the new legislations coming into the EU for Donegal tweed. I know that there has been the MP, whose name escapes me, it's a lady. She has done a report recently. There's going to be a meeting in Brussels on the 29th of November. So that legislation, while it's slow, it's really a massive opportunity to provide, I suppose, a protectional umbrella brand for tweed in Donegal. And I think that, the success of those geographical indicators, whether we've seen it in food, we've got 4 in Ireland, but when you look at Italy, there's an absolute wealth of food geographical indicators. And I think for Donegal tweed to be there and to be the first one in sort of the craft side of things, I think it's hugely important. It will need support. It will need support, and I think it will also need to be an entity or a branding entity that needs to be marketed well. It needs to have it's your vision, your mission that you spoke about, having all that brand architecture, having your brand assets so that you can go and tell people about this amazing product, because the opportunity you have under geographical indicators to go to international markets, it gives such reassurance to buyers around the quality, the provenance, you know, the sustainability, the story behind it, you know, and the type of products that we're talking about here, people buy them because of that emotive feeling, because of the story, because of the history, 150 years of history that's here, that they know it's guaranteed. And it also, I suppose, gives the protection against, you know, cheaper imports or imitations coming through as well. So that for me, that's a really, really important progression, and it is happening. I'm sure everyone's feeling it's quite slow, but that's how these things go. From a DCCI perspective, it's something we would absolutely support, and I think we have been supportive of it. A lot of it happened before my time. I've just been there for a year. But just knowing that that is progressing, I think that there's a huge opportunity there. I think if it's outside of that, a lot of what you said, Aideen, is really important about the design thinking. So it is about understanding the customer. So whether that's somebody that you're selling direct to a local market, or whether you're trying to get into you know, a more commercial business, understand them. You really need to know what's going on and how things are changing. And I thought it was really interesting. You said 10 years ago it was all about fast fashion. I thank goodness that has changed now. It is all about slow fashion, you know, and we're seeing amazing brands coming through. And amazing brands that have been here, but they're getting, you know, more profile. But I do think, and it's something that we have worked on for our Made Local campaign. So our Made Local campaign is really about us helping to promote products that are made locally within Ireland. We've had 3 iterations of the campaign, and the latest iteration of it, it's made local, made to last. And it's very much around the cost per wear. So if you have a beautiful tweed suit that's been in use for 10 years and you've worn it once a week, you know, the cost per wear, it's, you know, it's pence, you know, that type of thing. So I think these conscious consumerism is very much here. It's not something that we're wishing for. It's very much here. So if you can kind of understand that and I suppose communicate that as well. And I think bringing it back to the heritage. And I love, Chris, if you wouldn't mind just holding up
beautiful.
The map of Donegal there. I mean, you couldn't have, you know, more local than that. I think it's fantastic.
It's gorgeous. And actually, it's just going back to something that Chris was saying as well, that consumers in Ireland are buying a lot of your product, which means that the message is landing, that people would rather choose Irish products if they can, and if they're, you know, within their price range, than to buy something that's from outside Ireland, which is a great message that's obviously landing with people. So I'm going to ask you this, Bridie. How does, where you are based in Northern Ireland, how has it influenced your style of design, and how do you get this message across to your customers?
I suppose, like something you said earlier, you've got to look sideways and you've got to look outwards. Very fortunate to say, being supported by the council. I, for example, went to Boston. I spent I actually stayed a week after everybody else went home, just to walk the streets, visit the boutiques and see what's going on there. The kind of things people are buying, because whilst we're all wrapped up in woolly coats at the minute, you know, what's it like in Australia when it's not busy for me in the linen industry in the winter? Well, it's the summer season in Australia. You know, you got to look at not just what's local. I do have a lovely following locally and across Northern Ireland and Donegal. But, you know, temperatures vary from country to country. You got to look at the lifestyle that people have, that they're traveling more, they have several holidays a year. You're very limited in packing when you go to the airport. So they want something that's neat, tidy, and can be worn in many different ways. So, you know, some loungewear can be worn down to the beach. You can sleep in it or whatever. You can have a one-piece jumpsuit instead of taking 3 or 4 pieces. You know, so you got to study that market and see how are things changing. I think it came home to me one day when somebody said, that's got a very Zoom neckline. You know, and this was during COVID, and I thought, yeah, that's all you do see. You can have the pajamas from there down, but you really need a good neckline. So you're constantly building that into your brand and into your design. I was in New York a few weeks ago, and I went into a store you're probably familiar with, Ouroboros, and they do very simplistic shapes and designs, but their price line is around £800-900. Now, locally, we wouldn't get that here, which is very unfortunate, because if I make a coat, and if I'm busy, I'll have a few people working with me, hours and hours that go into that. And you look at the minimum wage, you look at the hours that go into it, you cost your materials, your shipping and everything else. 200 or 300 pound doesn't make it. And people have to realise if you want a product that is good quality, hand-tailored, well-made, that lasts a lifetime. I met somebody in Shipquay Street the other day and she said, I'm wearing my mother's coat. You made it for, she passed away. I felt really bad, but at least, the garment was still there. So I look on social media. Instagram, I think, is fabulous. All the magazines, I'm constantly buying, Vogue and so on. And just looking at what's out there and being aware that it's not just local. Yeah. Different temperatures. My brand is focused on an older age group. There's a bit more money to spend. They're traveling more. They are professionals. They want a good garment, well made, that they can depend on. It's the go-to. Pull it out of the wardrobe. It works. I'm not. You were talking earlier about your sort of focus on the brand. I'm not focused at a younger age group. Mm-hmm. That's for somebody else. And I think when I started off, I tried to be all things to all people. And I suppose we all do that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this, Chris. What advice can you give to startups and small businesses based in the Northwest? Because you have a business based in the Northwest. What advice can you give others?
I think the most important thing from a manufacturing perspective is understanding the product first and foremost. And I think the opportunity we have recently engaged over the last number of years with the universities, and that any new designer or maker understanding their product and the capabilities of it, and for the foundation of looking at their product and their design. Now, as Bridie indicated there, that the consumer and understanding the product that's out there and the market that you're trying to target is quite important. We've found that working, and once the designer and the maker understands the product and its limitations, it gives them an insight into to be able to be how creative they can be to it.
Right, okay, perfect. Bridie, this one's for you. So what inspires you as a designer?
What inspired me? I think it was always that hankering after creating and having a finished product. I could never work in the tech industry. I have to see something and physically be able to handle it. And so having a product is probably what inspired me to work on that. In terms of working in the fabric that I use, yes, it's got all the ethical qualities and sustainable and so on, but it's a lovely fabric to work with as well. I was never into polyesters. I can't handle slippery fabrics. And I wanted to see people wearing something that I had made and knowing that it would be, it would last forever, hand on from generation to generation. And I think it's just to see the look on someone's face when they've actually got something on. It works. My customers are very discerning. They don't rush in and buy something. They'll come into the shop 2 or 3 times, try it on, take photographs, go in, think about what goes with it. So I'm constantly watching, how they're buying and what they're using it for, and that influences, what I do next in terms of the next range of garments that I use. I think it's great too that, we are using locally produced materials, material that's woven in Northern Ireland, is dyed, it's coloured, it's presented locally. There's very few miles involved in the transition and getting it. And it makes up beautifully, Yeah. And it has international kudos, it works well in Japan, it works in Italy, and so on. And there are other linens out there in other countries, but there's something about it, I don't know why, but people want Irish linen, and I'm sure, Lithuanian linen is maybe just as good, but it has that sort of traditional value. Yeah. And we, obviously in the city here, get a lot of tourists, and they want something that travels well, pack it on their suitcase, and it's a lovely gift to take home.
Right. Okay, and I'm going to ask you this one, Maria. What changes do you see happening in the fashion and textile industry, and why?
Yeah, I think certainly. I think the one that's probably the forefront to our mind is around the circular economy, and I think that there's a body of work that is being done actually around circular economy. I suppose from my own experience, having come from food and having an understanding of waste, but actually, the circular economy and the understanding of end of use, I think is so important. But it's for us and the industry and for us to provide the skills and the knowledge, the digital knowledge, the technology, the training, the I suppose, and the support network around the circular economy, what it means and how it gets embedded, and one thing you were talking about, about starting up your own business, I would say, absolutely from the get-go, if you're starting up your own business, be as lean. The idea of lean manufacturing is so important, and the circularity of products as well. So at the end of your life of your product, where does it go? What happens to it? And to be able to communicate that story, but just to have thought about that within your own I suppose vision for your business, I think is incredibly important. So I think certainly the circular economy, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. If people are interested in it as well, as part of our design week, we had a presentation on circular by design yesterday, which is a new initiative that we're working with NCAD, so the Creative Futures Academy. And this essentially is a pilot project that we have run that there was a huge interest in. So we thought we were going to take on, I think, 11 or 12 companies. I think we ended up taking on 18. And really it was around bringing them together collaboratively, teaching them the digital skills that they need in this space. And then running through different workshops and I suppose coming up with a model that works and case studies that we can share around textiles and the circular economy. And that has just sort of finished up. So we're doing the kind of analysis part of it, and we're hoping that we can then take our learnings from that, but replicate across different parts of the industry as well. So circular by design, if you're interested in it, I think it's definitely worth looking at.
Brilliant. So now I'm going to open it up to the floor.